Have you ever wondered what it's like to be one of the top 10 in your profession in the entire world? Well, today you get the pleasure of talking to a former top 10 professional tennis player. Not only was he top 10 in the world, but he's also the most winningest decorated U.S. Davis Cup captain in tennis history. But before we meet today's guest, make sure you push that subscription button as well as the notification bell so you never miss another episode with another amazing professional here on the Pro Talk podcast. So today's guest, I'm honored to call him a friend, a legendary top 10 tennis player, winningest Davis Cup coach, Mr. Tom Gorman. Tom, how are you?
Rob, how you doing? I'm doing great.
It's a great day here in the ATL. It's not raining yet, so things are good. How's everything your way?
Well, it's good. We're over here at Reynolds, just about halfway to Augusta from Atlanta, and we're waiting for the rain too,
Yeah.
to tell you the truth.
It's a
We
big
need
deal
it,
since
don't we?
Yeah, it's a big
Yeah.
deal since we haven't had much rain. So, I want to first of all thank you for your friendship. And I was thinking back a couple of days ago how long I've known you. I guess it was middle '90s when you and your family moved to
Yes.
Atlanta.
Yeah, we moved in '93. Haley and Kellyanne, we moved over to Sibley in '95, and that's where we met you. And so a few years ago,
Yeah.
looking at you now, the memories are just flowing back. My daughters wouldn't listen to me, but they sure listened to Rob Carver, Coach Rob.
Yeah. Well, I think it was awesome that when you said that your kids were playing tennis, that I never achieved the same type notoriety in tennis, but it was always kind of a pressure on my kids that, well, your dad's a pro. Does that mean that you are a good tennis player? And I never
Sure.
wanted my kids to feel that. Did you feel like your kids face some of that?
I think they must have, but I wasn't, and neither was Danny, putting pressure on them to do anything more if they didn't want to do it. They loved the social part of it. They both went to Marist, which was a really powerhouse in the girls' tennis. So they enjoyed a winning field state championships. They chose not to play in college. I think they both could have been good doubles players in college, but I think they wanted to enjoy the college life, which
Yeah.
they both did.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And they playing at Marist, that's a solid school. And I do remember working with your children that I feel like I know my stuff, but there's a little bit of nervousness knowing that the winningest Davis Cup coach is right over there watching. But and I know you're watching as a proud dad. And then I also love the fact that when I'd see you on the court, just hitting with your kids, and it was, that's a special, dad-daughter time to get to hit with your kids. But I appreciate the honor to work with your kids.
Well, they loved with you, Rob, and you're a staple there. We just talked about all the people we've met that have continued to go through Sibley Forest in particular, where the community we lived in. And I will tell you, the only thing that my daughters would really probably tell you that I would say the most is move your feet.
There you go.
Recognize right from the get-go that was almost the key in sports and in tennis was the movement of feet. The strokes will come, the
Right.
determination comes, whether they really want it or not. But you aren't going to give yourself a chance unless you move your feet.
That's right. And I remember you and I hitting one time, and I said to you, I said, you were pretty quick on tour, weren't you? Because I could see your wheels. You kind of glided, and the best movers glide. They don't look like they're struggling on the court. So, and I have watched film of you play. So also, I wanted to thank you again. I wrote a tennis book years ago, and you were very kind to write the foreword to this. So that got it selling off the shelf for a little while anyway. So,
Well, that was a very clever book, very clever idea, Rob, and I think a terrific keep it simple type of situation, not try to complicate it.
mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate your insights, and I threw some a little bit of the copy to you, and you proofed it, and I was waiting for the A+ from the teacher. So I appreciate that again.
Sure.
So I wanted to ask you, you grew up in the state of Washington. Not many professional tennis players come from the state of Washington. What age did you pick up a tennis racket?
I was probably about 5 years old. My grandfather gave my sisters and myself a couple tennis rackets. My dad had to whittle down the handle to make them small enough for us. And I enjoyed it a lot. I think I enjoyed my sisters who were older than I. They were both really good athletes. So there was the competition built right into the family. and got very lucky. I kept playing in the park system there in Seattle. There was a tournament when I was 12 years old. It was held at the Seattle Tennis Club. It was an open tournament, and another young man who became a very good friend of mine and still is, Steve Hops. We played doubles together, and we won the tournament, the 12 and under, 13 and under, I guess, at that time. And we were both invited because of a foundation to become members of a junior member of the Seattle Tennis Club, which would a dream come true. Financially, we couldn't afford that, and so this foundation kind of bridged that gap between the budget and the talent.
Hmm.
And so, had it not been for that, I wouldn't be talking with you right now about what we're talking about
Okay.
because it opened up the door. I had competition with all the best players in Seattle, and then financially, they would pay for all my expenses traveling in the summer during college and even the first year and a half on the tour.
Wow.
They subsidized my trip to Rome, to Paris, to Wimbledon, and then over to Australia for that 1969 into 1970, which again were huge in my development
Hmm.
because compared to my buddies like Stan Smith and Arthur Ashe, they were developed all through, they really developed their game during their teenage years. And I
Hmm.
was a late bloomer. It wasn't until I got into college that I started to, be able to compete against these guys.
Yeah. Well, do you think that was a plus for you that you developed a little bit later, that you didn't face
Well,
burnout?
I mean, I didn't think of it as anything more than just this is the way it is.
Right.
I had a lot of supporters at the Seattle Tennis Club say, Tom, you can beat these guys. You can beat these guys from Southern California. They aren't that great. That kind of,
Right.
encouragement. And, I lost a lot more than I won. And, you come back to us in Seattle, we didn't have any indoor courts until I was midway through college either. So it was a 4-month sport in Seattle, that's for
Wow.
sure. So it took a while, but that that year that I'd call the bonus year between 69 and 70, had it not been so I'll tell you what it convinced me when I went to Australia, because they were the best players and had been for years prior,
Hmm.
going back to Rod Laver, Ken Rosewall, coming into Newcomb and Roach. Played my first tournament over Christmas time in Adelaide, and it was about 95 degrees. A couple of American players and I were there, Ken Stewart and Lenny Schloss. We went to the practice courts to sign up, and we were thinking we'd get in an hour and a half, because when you'd play in America, you'd go and that's how much time they'd give you on the courts. And so we said we'd like to play, and they handed us one of those cardboard boxes filled with tennis balls. They were all used. There are 12 of them in there. And they said, court 16. And they said, for how long? I said, well, as long as you want it. And I thought, oh, okay, this is
Nice.
why these guys are so good. They had the courts,
Yeah.
they had the encouragement to stay out as long as you wanted to, and kind of said, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to stay out there. Hard work, boom.
There you go. That's great. Well, it's funny that you said that play. It's like I can hear the joy in your voice to this day, and I still enjoy just hitting the ball. There's something so pure and fun about just hitting a ball.
Yeah, the sound. It's both the sound and the feel. I think,
Yeah.
yeah, that is the joy.
Well, you said you started playing tennis. Did you play any other sports early on, youth sports?
Yeah, I wanted to be New York Yankee, to tell you the truth, but at 13, I stopped growing. So from Little League to Babe Ruth, I tried out for Babe Ruth, but all of a sudden these guys were shaving that I was I was playing against. I'm just 5'3" and
Right.
wasn't going to do it. But what helped me early on with tennis was my movement. I was playing, kids that were having lessons, et cetera, and I was just a raw athlete, and that helped me a lot,
Hmm.
my speed.
Yeah. So going back on your high school days, you won 3 state championships in high school.
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
And I hate to bring this up, but you only lost one match. And do you remember that match?
Of course I do. Yeah.
I figured you would.
That would have been the 4th year, but that was my freshman year
Okay.
at, Seattle Prep and so but I was very happy with our team success. We were state champs as well as winning the singles tournament.
That's awesome. And it's anybody that's played, the second day interregion, then to go to state, and that's got to make you feel great.
Well, it was, they actually recruited back then, I will tell you, we can confess because I remember, the players that were a little older than I at Seattle Prep would come and watch me play in my juniors, and they would say, and they knew I loved baseball. So they said, "Well, why do you want to spend the summers in Seattle on dusty baseball fields when you can travel to cities like Yakima and
Right.
Wenatchee and Spokane and Portland and Vancouver?" I thought, "Ooh, that sounds neat.
Yeah.
Travel sounds neat."
Yeah.
So maybe that was a weird way of getting me
Yeah.
excited about playing.
Well, I guess that's not uncommon. I mean, schools like Baylor, Darlington, and those prep schools, it happens.
Well, it happens, but, that was back in in the late '50s,
Yeah.
Rob, come on.
Yeah.
We're
Right.
dating ourselves, but come on, they can
Yeah.
people can add those up.
Yeah, I keep wanting to go back to high school, get an NIL deal. Some of the stuff that you hear about these days, just nuts. But so you went to Seattle University, and then you
Yeah,
became an All-American, 67 to 68, correct?
yes, and probably also part of my development, probably one of the best things that happened to me, I wanted to go to either USC or UCLA. They were the 2 major college powerhouses along with, and neither one of them had a scholarship opening. They were always plucking in the number 1 and number 2 juniors. I was ranked, I think 31 in the, juniors nationally. So, and I also tried to get a scholarship at Notre Dame. They said no. So I stayed in Seattle, stayed at home, and it turned out to be the best, Rob, because every match I played then for the 3 years, was against another number 1 player, rather than if I'd been at FC, I would have
Mm,
been the 6th guy on the opening squad,
right.
and it's not as though the competition wouldn't have been good, but it wasn't nearly what I came up against in college, and
Sure.
again, that was part of the growth in my, late blooming.
Yeah. Well, there you go. You took a challenge and turned that into a positive. And
Well, here, I let me share one real quick
yeah.
story because when I'm down in Miami at the NCAA my sophomore year, I ended up playing a top player at UCLA, and I beat him. And the coach of USC, the great George Tolley, came up to me right afterwards, and he said, "See, Tom, I didn't have to waste a scholarship on you for us to win because by me beating the guy at UCLA, USC won the NCAA that year." So I said, "Oh, thanks a lot, George."
Yeah, being a spoiler. Good work, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
But you made the quarterfinals of the NCAA, is that correct?
Yeah, I think 2 years I made it, lost to Stan, probably a couple of those years. I lost to him every time I played him for about 8 times.
Yeah.
So he was, the best player in the country as an 18-year-old, then the best player
Yeah.
during college.
Yeah. But your performance got you, was it 1968 Seattle University's Man of the Year?
Yeah, yes, it did.
That's impressive.
It's a great honor. Yeah,
Now,
thanks.
as a junior player, you talked about that one singles match. I don't know which one it was, but was there a defeat that you would classify as your worst defeat as a kid?
Don't remember too many of those because there weren't a lot of wins, quite frankly, Rob. I mean,
Okay.
by being ranked number 1, I think I won 2 rounds at, Kalamazoo, maybe won a match or 2 at Springfield, Ohio, and maybe 1 in the, JC tournament. So that wasn't really significant. Um, it was more, early on in my pro career when I had a couple losses that I thought, maybe I was a little cocky,
Hmm.
had a nice trip to Australia, had a good, uh, Wimbledon in '69 and then a solid one in '70. And then I ended up losing to Harold Solomon on grass, if you can imagine that as a tennis player. Um, I mean, that would be like, I can't even describe it.
Yeah.
So, you come back in the locker room and you're just distraught and can't figure it out. And so you have to deal with that. You can't dwell on it. I mean, you dwell on it, then you shouldn't be in the sport. That Roger Federer has a terrific video that he has out as he spoke at a commencement for a university. And basically, he's saying the best players just don't have any memory. They just don't think about it. You
Hmm.
lose a point, and he named a statistic where the number of points he played over his career and the number of percentage of points that he won. He said, "You're going to lose a lot. I lost at least just under half of all the points I ever played." Well, so if you dealt too long with it, one year I was in the midst of a long losing streak to Ely Nastase. Half the time, his antics were such that it got to me. The other times, his great mobility and ability was too much. This time in New York, I thought I had him and I lost. I came back in the locker room. I'm sitting over in the corner and I'm, in the locker room, nobody cares. I mean, there's no separate room, but
Hmm.
I'm just in the corner. I remember this player, Jelko Franolovic, who's from Yugoslavia at that time, the country, came over and said, "Tom, what's wrong? You dejected." And I said, I can't figure this out. I've lost to him 8 times in a row. I had him. I just don't know what to do. I'm shaking my head. And I said, "What do I do?" He said, "Take a shower." So, that's kind of what you had to do. Forget about it and get through with it. It's easier said than done,
Sure.
because you're there. You want to think you've done all you can do to win, but then oh, maybe I could have spent a little more time on something.
Sure.
And at that time, we didn't have coaches, so we're really self-reliant on how we could evaluate our own game and be realistic.
Yeah. If we stop this right here, there's so many good nuggets right there for the recreational player that complains about losing so much. That line in Aerosmith song, "You gotta lose to learn how to win." And I think that's so important because there's a lot of losing and you got to figure out how to win through your losing and self-assessment. I think that's awesome.
Well, it's tough, and I went to 12 losses against Nastase. The 12th the 11th was the brutal one in Davis Cup in Bucharest in 72. Then I lost him the week after that in Barcelona in an ATP tournament. That was number 12. 2 weeks later, we're playing Paris indoors, and I finally beat him
Got him.
because, Rob, as you know, nobody beat Tom Gorman 13
13.
times in a row. Yeah,
Exactly.
as the old
Right.
joke goes.
Yeah. And then Vitas had what, 17 in a row against
Finally,
Borg? Yeah. Yeah.
and then, after that, I think I beat Ely 4 out of the next 5 times.
Awesome.
So it was like, oh, was there a little psychological hump to get over? Duh.
There you
Yeah,
go. Right. Knowing that you could.
exactly.
Now, did you have any mentors or coaching influences as a young kid before you got to college?
Had a couple or a couple players when I was younger that were still amateurs from the Seattle Tennis Club, and these were guys that probably could have played on the tour, but at that time there was absolutely no money. So the old saying used to be you'd either go into banking or you'd be a stockbroker if you were, after being a tennis pro because you had made so many connections.
Right.
So I had a couple of these in Seattle, and what they would do was when I came back from the summer months of playing back on the East Coast on the clay court and the grass court circuit, I'd come back and think I was playing pretty well. And both of these guys beat me, and they would kind of remind me, okay, I got a lot of work to do. But we didn't have coaches then. The closest I came would be the 71, being asked to be on the Davis Cup team. Dennis Ralston was the coach. He was still the pro down at Mission Hills in Rancho Mirage. And there were about 4 or 5 of us players that would actually go down to him for about a week and work out because he was never traveling with anybody on the tour. We didn't have entourages or
Right.
teams back then. So he would have been the closest to have been my coach that was helpful. He was the one that was in the at Wimbledon the year that I beat Laver there, and I actually went out to dinner with him the night before the match and strategy, which you know, worked, uh, to the point where, I had the biggest, most popular win to me as to me, the GOAT
Sure.
of the generation back before these current
Hmm.
players. And that would be an interesting win because prior in that year, so this would have been as in Rome playing Rod Laver for the first time, nervous as could be, but I actually won a set on clay. Most of the players that knew me knew that there was not a baseline that I liked. I mean, I was a servant volleyer. I wanted to get up to
Get in.
net, but I won a set, and I really thought, okay, it hit me that I'm this kid from Seattle, from the Parks, and I have actually won a set from Rod Laver. And inside of me, that did more for my confidence, just winning a set
Hmm.
because he won the next two to win the match. Well, I end up playing him about 5 weeks later at the Queen's Club the week before Wimbledon. And then if you have any sayings that can carry you through, you have to say, okay, if I won one set, I can win two sets. And I beat him at Queen's. Ended up playing him at Wimbledon the next week or 2 weeks later and was able to win that match because I felt confident. Not that I was a better player than he, but if I'm playing really well, I can beat this guy.
Hmm.
And so that's drawing that fine line between being overconfident, being cocky, but being realistic that, if you're on your day, you can do it.
So, what were you thinking about on changeovers? Was it a tactical thing, or was it more of keeping that steady confidence in your head?
There were, which I don't remember all of the different things that we had, because at that time, as you remember, when Arthur Ashe was playing Jimmy Connors that famous year at Wimbledon in the finals, and Arthur had actually written the notes down, and he changed the sides, and nobody's up in the coach's box yelling down, hit it to Jimmy's
Yeah.
short two-handed shot. Um, and so you'd have to remind yourself, and so there would be about 3 or 4 points that and Dennis and I had discussed that I would just be reminding myself, okay, keep doing it because I was leading and I was never behind in that match. So
Hmm.
that helps too. Just keep doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Keep doing it.
I remember on match point, you served him wide, nice open court volley, and you looked like it was just a day in the park. So, any butterflies on match point? We've all had those, like, I'm
Oh, but
about to win.
Rob, people will never see a video of that, but we never took time in between points. Guys now towel off, guys and gals, they wait for the balls. There's 25 seconds. I look at a video of that and I just went right from the 40 love point, walked right up to service line,
Boom.
probably 10 seconds. So, it didn't give me time to get nervous or,
Hmm. Right. You just execute, right? Stay in the
just
moment.
did it.
That's all.
Yeah.
And you took him out in straight sets. That was impressive.
That's the match of my career, no doubt.
Yeah. On the biggest stage. How great is that?
Yeah, it was
That's huge. You can give yourself one of those. That's good work.
well, no, but the thrill of playing at Wimbledon,
Hmm.
which is a young kid's dream, of getting on that stage, because I did play a couple matches prior to that. The first time I played Ken Rosewall, and I had the center court nerves, believe me. I had a chance to get into the fifth set, and I think one of my volleys is still traveling through the air if it hadn't hit the backstop. I was so nervous. So it happens, but when the nerves can be calmed down, then you're trying to stay on an even keel
Yeah.
mentally and emotionally.
I wanted to ask you a question about when you mention baseball and the Yankees. You worked for the Yes Network for a little while, correct? When you were
Yes.
okay. Did you ever have a chance to meet Derek Jeter and say, "Hey, I was you before you were you. I wanted to be you."
Oh, I would love to have, because those were during the years. I was at the game just after 9/11 when they're having the World Series
Yeah.
against Arizona. It
Arizona,
was
right?
unbelievable. And, Tino tied it in the ninth inning with a
Yeah.
home run, and the stadium just shook. And then Derek came up the next inning and hit
Yeah.
another home run. So that's the closest I came. Never had an opportunity to
Yeah.
meet him, but he's certainly been. Uh, a great athlete
Yeah.
and a great representative of that sport, no doubt.
I like talking to baseball coaches and pick their mind about greatest World Series ever. If you look at the political climate of what our country was going through and the way the Yankees came back, even though the Yankees lost that, and how beautiful was it to go to 7 games? And there's a lot of pain for Yankee fans about what happened, but to me, that's one of the top World Series ever, just because of what was going on and the tension. And like Joe Buck said, it's good to be back. And I think our country needed baseball. And I was happy for the Yankees to win the games that they won the way they won it, especially at Yankee Stadium.
That was an exciting series, no doubt, for all the reasons you're saying, Rob.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I remember back to our time in Atlanta, you and I on the court, you started telling me about this kid named Ichiro. Wait till you see this kid Ichiro. And we always talk about baseball. It's great. So I want to get to your pro tour and what people think the pro tour is. You didn't have med jets. You didn't have entourages. Can you give us, first of all, how many events would you play, and tell us about your travel?
Yeah, we travel all the time. Because there was so little money. First round losers was $500. Maybe it got up to 1,000, maybe. So you were just trying to make ends meet. You weren't saving that much money. I played, I think, 35 tournaments during the year. And when you double that, or when you count over tournaments that are like the slams, those are 2 weeks at a time. And then you'd have to be traveling between the US and Australia, count a few more days, that there weren't a lot of off days. And then if there were some off times, like I say, we'd go down to Rancho Mirage and work out. So there were no holidays to speak of. I got home to Seattle a couple weeks over Christmas. There'd be a week, then we'd play US indoors and then a Caribbean tour, and then have about a week or two off before going over to Europe, starting with Rome, all through the clay circuit, and then ending with Wimbledon. I never played the Irish Open, even though we have family from there. I would love to have, because that was a week after the Wimbledon. But by being in Europe and Wimbledon for about 8 or 9 weeks, I wanted to get home to Seattle. I wanted to get back to my favorite cheeseburger place and feel human.
Yeah.
And then we'd start right up with the U.S. clay circuit. At that time, the grass circuit. Then it became the hardcore cement. We'd go out to L.A. and Berkeley, and then head down to Australia and start up through Japan and Hong Kong. So it was nonstop, and then come back, after Christmas, when Australia used to be the first tournament of the slams of the year, not the final one. Or I'm sorry, the vice versa.
Yeah.
The last first rather than
Right.
last.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know what my body feels like when I go 3 hours from Atlanta and then to play sports. And I don't want to compete with other sports, but what tennis players do on an international level, it's not like LA to Atlanta where you just get, West Coast team, East Coast team. That's crazy what it must feel like on the body.
Well, living in Seattle would be that extra trip over to Europe, about 4 or 5 more hours than the East Coast. I had one really long trip from Johannesburg to Buenos Aires, and that was overnight up through Kinshasa in Africa. I was in the back of the plane. Some people got off, I think in Zaire, and 2 more seats opened up, and other people were coming on, and that was before you were assigned seats. You kind of would come on a plane and find a seat. And I thought, I've got to fly all night to Buenos Aires. I'm trying to win at least one match to get into the Masters. So I did kind of a tricky little thing. I spread out on the 3 seats, and I got a blanket, and I got a barf bag. I kind of had right on my chest, so that if somebody came by, they think I would been sick. And it's really a rotten thing to do. I can confess now. I mean, it's a few years later, but
Yeah.
but I won my match in BA, so that was good.
Right.
There you go.
Do what you got to do, being resourceful. Well, okay, because these days people fly first class, or they, have the whole row to themselves. So
Right.
So, and you mentioned the training. You don't have a personal coach, and these days people have physios, and everything's mapped out for them. So that self-discipline. Now, I think the tour must have been tighter. That, hey, Stan Smith, we're friends. I know you guys are best buddies, but so when you get to the tournament, I mean, you could be working out with the guy that you're going to be playing next round.
Well, yeah, that too, Rob, and then it would be, how do you wanna practice? How does this guy wanna practice?
Yeah.
You know, some wanted to play points, some wanted to play sets, some wanted to just drill cross court, see if you can keep the ball in play all day. I mean, so you had to find somebody that you were friendly with, but wanted to work as hard and wanted to work exactly like you did. That was the only way. We didn't have, like you said, the coaches out there feet or
Yeah.
a hitting partner.
Right.
I
Man.
think I think Djokovic has a couple of them with that travel with him.
Right. Well, Ken DeHart's son was out. He was a stud college player. He spent, I think, a year in Shanghai or 6 months in Shanghai hitting, being a practice partner for the
Yeah,
women's tour. That's a pretty cool gig.
sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So you had a pretty successful. I'll say I'll take your career any day. You won 7 singles titles. You had 10 doubles titles. Semifinalist at Wimbledon, French Open, and U.S. Open. What surface was your favorite to play?
At that time, serving and volleying was my game, Rob, so I'd say, I was a natural on grass, although the grass courts look different now, looks like and there's only one tournament. I
Yeah.
mean, Australia, the US Open, and Wimbledon were all grass court. It was all softer grass than others, but, and then a fast hard court, which I grew up in Seattle. Anything that required me to hit more than 4 or 5 shots during a rally would have been uncomfortable for me compared to the guys that were starting to hit with top. Borg at another level, Harold Solomon, Eddie Dibbs, the Europeans. Our strokes were flatter. They were starting to move over to that Western grip, big loop on the forehand. So a little bit of adjustment. I did have one good French Open. I got to the semis, but it had been a dry spring and they forgot to water down the courts. And so I actually served and
Yeah.
volleyed my
Yeah.
way to the semifinals of the French Open, which would be unheard of now.
Yeah. Yeah.
The minute I beat a Frenchman there, the next day they started watering down the courts.
The fix was in, huh?
Yeah.
Clay, I played on clay a couple times. I was a serving volleyer in college, and I called my dad because I was playing my doubles partner from junior college, who's a big baseliner. I said, "How would you play him?" And my dad said, "You play the game you have," because I wasn't going to
Yeah.
beat him from the baseline. And it was actually kind of fun to slip and fall and all that. And I thought I thought playing on grass with a sand base is so difficult, and I believe when grass is a softer base, it's the most difficult surface. What's your opinion on the toughest
Uh,
surface?
yeah, I mean, you want a ball that comes through to you true. So, some of the grass courts were a lot of adjustments. I mean, you get a low bouncing ball, high bouncing ball,
Hmm.
just, how you would adjust to it. But it was a very quick point. I mean, I used to play in close. I'd play inside the baseline a lot and almost half volley,
On the
even
rise.
even on the clay court, because it's just like what you said. It's what I was comfortable with. I
Hmm.
wasn't going to be playing a foot or two behind the baseline.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I think it was February 3rd. Let me pull it up here. It was, I remember. I'm at a concert, February 3rd, 2025, just a little bit over a year, a couple months ago. I sent you a text because in between bands, my son and I were at a rock show, and in between bands, I thought, why does February 3rd stick in my mind so much? Well, when I was a junior in high school, I saw Bjorn Borg on his farewell tour. He was playing Roscoe Tanner at the Roundhouse in Tennessee and up in Chattanooga. And I sent you this text. I reminded you, I said, hey, 42 years ago on this night, my dad and I saw Bjorn Borg. I said, on the way home, my dad said, Borg never lobbed. I said, it was a great experience. Whatever, just want to touch base. I get a picture back from you, and it said, this guy beat Borg 50 years ago because Borg lobbed too much. Let me see if I can. There's the picture of you and Borg shaking hands, if you can see that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, and that's your victory. Now, was that in Stockholm when you beat him?
I was in Stockholm. It was an indoor court. They played it on a floor that was almost like linoleum. I mean, it was so fast. It was incredible, really, that Borg got through to the final, even though he was such a great player. I mean, the rallies were so short. And we got into a tiebreaker, I think, in the third set. And I was very nervous. I came to net and I was so nervous that I almost overcommitted and almost ran into the net. If he had actually ball had actually hit the net and come up into play, he would have won the point because I touched the net.
Yeah.
But his ball went into the net, ended the point, and I'm crashing into the net. And it was only because it was the only way I felt I could win the final point was just be all over
Right.
that net. And he was really a gracious young man, years younger than I, so didn't really socialize with him. You know, he was more in the McEnroe era, but very respectful. I would say that he paid me quite a nice compliment in a book that he wrote because I ended up playing him the year that he won maybe the fourth or fifth Wimbledon in a row. And what he mentioned was one of the most nervous times he's ever been was drew a first round match against me because, as the commentators say a lot of times, the best time to beat a clay court really good player is that first round at Wimbledon.
Yeah.
Because they are used to the grass. And so the match wasn't that close. He had it well in hand, but I was proud that he at least, feared me to a point where he said, "Ooh, this will make me nervous."
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's second career over the world number one. That is huge. I think that's just so great.
Well, it was great. Probably, it's the single moment of beating Rod was phenomenal. But as a tennis pro, you're trying to win it. You want to win a tournament. And so that's your ultimate goal. You don't start Monday saying, "Oh, I just want to have a couple good wins." So that when you had a really good match, say in a quarter or semifinal, you want to back it up with another good match and not just say, "Oh, they're just a one-win wonder," so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So I consider that the very best tournament I ever played was beating Borg in the finals in his hometown.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great night's sleep, huh?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I of that picture, my follow-up text to that, because I looked at the racket in your hand and I said, was it this Arthur Ashe comp club that you were using? And it was. So now this thing is just nuts. It's like, it's so sleek and flat, and I don't know, 13,
Yeah.
15 ounces. It's a monster. This one's a 4 5/8 grip. And it was somebody gave this to my brother, and he didn't play tennis, but I was using my first high school tennis match. I was using the Kramer autograph, and it was about 45 degrees, and I hit a backhand, it broke. And this was like, I thought I was cool because I had two rackets. I picked this club up, and it developed a backhand to me because it dropped the racket down low, and I just turned my body, and all of a sudden I had this booming backhand. But so I asked you about how did you come to using that racket? Can you tell the story about, I think it was Nikki Pillett, you were playing in Australia, and how you became a fan of the Arthur Ashe comp?
Well, yeah, I will. Arthur was playtesting the Ashe racket in '68. Howard Head, who had developed the skis, modified his design for skis with the racket. So they had the fiberglass, the black part, and then they had the aluminum sheets over them. And if you look at an old comp ski or standard or master, it looks the same as the side of an Arthur racket. So Arthur was only trying out these in practices in the summer of '68. I remember occasionally hitting with it. And I said, "Boy, this feels good." And what it felt to me was that because of the material and the strength of the aluminum, that there were no soft spots on the strings, where with the wood racket, maybe at the top, it wouldn't give you the same strength. And I thought, gee whiz, I can hit the ball any place on the racket, on the strings, and it feels good. So I had played with it just in practice a few times. Fast forward through the fall, go down to Australia and playing first round, the Australian Open, Nikki Pilic from Yugoslavia. And he would be kind of similar to Djokovic would act in a tennis match whenever things weren't going well early on in his career. And he'd kind of look up in the heavens and he'd talk to the tennis gods. And Nicky was that kind of a guy. He was real flamboyant. And he won the first two sets. And I'm at the end of the 6 weeks in Australia and I've got my Kramers and I look in my bag and I only have one more left because the other ones are all broken. And quite frankly, wasn't the greatest of attitude, but I thought, well, I can't beat this guy. This guy's ranked in top 10 in the world. I'll get through this match. I'll lose in 3 straight sets, head back to Seattle and rest for a week. And so I lost behind 2 sets. And I remember Arthur was walking back behind the tennis court, and I saw him walking with a couple players, and he had his bag, and I just yelled down to him and said, Arthur, hey, can I use one of your rackets, to spare? Because I only have one more that I'm playing with. And he looked at me weird because this is a very strange thing
Yeah.
that you would think somebody would change rackets
Yeah.
during the middle of the match. Plus, at that time, it was so revolutionary. But he said, sure. So he put it down there. And I can't remember, the racket's fraying. I'm thinking this is ridiculous. So I took his racket out. And Rob, I started playing phenomenal. I mean, I won the 3rd set. I won the 4th set. By this time, Nicky is like losing it. Guys are starting to gather around the court. We were out back because it was just something that was so weird.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even say how different it was. And so we ended up, it got dark. We had to stop. We had to come out the next day, and he ended up winning the 5th set. Reality kind of hit me. But from that day on, that was the racket. And you think you have that racket. Look at the one I have. I've got one of the originals and that I kept forever. And so when you showed your art, I said, I can match you. I can match you. There you go. Look at
Dueling
that.
sabers, huh?
There you go.
We
That's
talked
great.
about that. Go ahead.
So I ended up using it and, all the way through. One year I made a mistake that athletes do and went for the money. Spalding paid me a bunch of money to play with their racket they said would play just like the comp. I believed them. I got at that time, a boatload of money, probably about $5,000 to play for the year, and didn't win a match for 6 months. At the end of the 6 months, we came to a mutual agreement that I wasn't good for Spalding and Spalding wasn't good for me. So we ended that relationship, went back to Osborne and Hewlin, the sporting goods store in Seattle that had provided me with the head rackets. I think I had to buy about the first 5 rackets that I played with, and then they brought me back because I started winning some matches.
Nice.
Yeah.
Different than the way it is today, huh?
Holy cow. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember when you were here in Atlanta, we talked about that racket and we talked about going to hit with each other with that racket. And a lot of people don't know this, that if both players have a wood racket, you realize how true it feels when you hit with a wood racket. And I think it's okay that technology has changed and so forth, but there's something pure about hitting a ball in the feel of hitting the sweet spot with a wood racket.
Well, I don't remember it. It's too long ago, but I agree with you. And then I'm not sure exactly about the strings that the guys are using now. I know the guys talk about the strings, how great they are. So the game that these guys are playing now is just fantastic. I don't understand it, but I know what goes into the making of it because I see these guys train. I love watching the slams when they start showing them in the locker room working out. I mean, these guys are really working.
Yeah.
And they are strong and they're fast, and the rackets and the strings create. I mean, Rob, these guys are hitting 100 miles an hour ground strokes.
Nuts.
From baseline to baseline. We were hardly getting that on our serves. We had a couple guys over 100 miles an hour, but
yeah.
So, it's requiring jet-like reaction as well. I mean, it's just phenomenal what they're doing now.
Well, when I mentioned earlier about the travel, what professional tennis players have to go through, when you look back at, let's say, I don't know, 78, when McEnroe went to the semifinals of Wimbledon, I like to use him because he had such great touch and he transferred from a wood racket to a graphite racket. So just that, so we dump wood rackets by early 80s and then everybody's playing with graphite, fiberglass, whatever. That technology, Then the technology of making that even better, lighter, stronger Kevlar, all these different properties they put in. And then when Sampras and Agassi retired, the evolution of polyester strings. I don't know any other
Yeah.
sport that has such in 20 years. The advances in technology, just nuts, crazy.
Well, I know, and I think Roger was talking and explaining to somebody the difference of feeling the difference between a pound of pressure, whatever you're stringing it on grams or pounds, and that he would just kind of do this to a racket. He said, "Oh, that's too tight," or "No, too loose," and
Yeah.
because they know I mean, they're so precise.
Yeah.
And they're I think Roger did, but I know Djokovic does travel at the slams with the stringer, and every night he takes his 6 or 8 rackets from Novak, strings them, brings them to the pro shop where Novak will come at 9 in the morning to pick them up. Every day, every morning, they're brand new.
Yeah.
You
No, I can't
and
imagine that. No.
they're precise.
Yeah. Yeah. Just nuts. All right. I want to get to, and it was talked about, it was billed as one of the greatest acts of sportsmanship in the last 50 years. You talked about the year-end Masters. I think you got kind of jobbed the year before because you qualified, but they said you had to have so many representatives from each country, so you missed out. You were playing your brains out to win. I think that's what it is. You had to win so many matches to qualify for the Masters. So let's fast forward. Let's go back to Barcelona in 1972. First of all, they started the first match, Eli Nastasi, and I forgot who he played, at 10 p.m. And
Yeah,
then you were playing Stan Smith, correct?
correct. Yeah.
Okay, your nemesis, but good buddy, and you're winning. So let's go all the way. You're up 2-1. It's 30 all. You're up 5-4. Tell us what happened.
I'll give a little background to it.
Go ahead.
When you mentioned the match started at 10 o'clock, we knew the schedule of matches. They had published that. In Spain, things start late. So we actually went a week early, Stan and myself and Jimmy, to southern Spain, and we practiced, starting our practices around 8 o'clock at night. So that was not strange. It wasn't like they surprised us. So, but except that, Ely beats Jimmy in straight sets, fortunately, because they finished about midnight. So Stan and I walk on the court at midnight. And at that time, they were making a big deal out of it, but to us, we had trained for it. So I'm playing against Stan. And again, I think I was 0-8 with him, but I had close matches with him. But this night I played as well as I'd ever played against him. And we were in the fourth set. I'm up 2-1 if it's the third or fourth game. Um, and in my mind, I kind of still remember the point. It was a short ball. I came in, I hit a forehand and kind of jammed the feet on the court. It was a synthetic court indoors. And all of a sudden, I could feel my back twinge and then go out, so to speak. The year before was when I played Laver, and at the end of his match, unbeknownst to most people, is I had the same injury, but because it was at the end of the match, I didn't know what the next few days were going to be like, and I won that service game. And then it wasn't until I got to the locker room and had a massage and, a little therapy that I remember that I couldn't stand up straight. And I literally was in bed when I beat Laver Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday before I played the next match with Stan at Wimbledon. So all of a sudden I have the same injury because I knew exactly what it was. I just couldn't believe it was happening, but I knew what the result was going to be. That if I happened to have won that match, I wouldn't have been able to play the next day.
Mm-hmm.
So my thought that I recall, and again, it's a long time ago, was that, I'll just play this out because I can't really do anything, and he'll win the fourth set, then I'll retire. I didn't want to make a big deal while I was ahead. But sure enough, I go out there and it's like I played loosey goosey. I'm trying to miss shots, Rob, and they went in. And then I it was the only time in the match that I did not serve at volley, and I served and stayed back, and Stan missed returns. And it's like he didn't know what was going on. He could tell that I was not coming in, but he didn't know I was hurt. So we turn around 2 more games later. I literally got to that point where it's 30 all, he's serving, and he had missed 2 of the easiest volleys he probably ever missed in his career to get me to 30 all. And he hits the ball to my backhand, and it's out of my reach, and I just go over and swing, and I literally swung as hard as I could, and it went in, which then put me at match point. And, whatever goes on in your brain to make a split-second decision, it was that moment, and I just kept walking straight to the umpire and explained that I'd hurt my back 2 games previously. I was able to get through these points, but I've got to retire because I know tomorrow, because I experienced this a year before. And so it was easy to make that decision because the truth was I'm in a Barcelona hotel all the next day, and most of the next, I can't move. I can't get out of bed because of the stiffness. Everything was in the sciatica, the whole deal. And so that's the story of that.
It's so classy because you,
I'm sorry, people were assuming I'd win the last point. Well, there was no guarantee. So,
yeah.
it was a sensational moment for it to happen. There's no doubt. I would never have dreamed that I'd be in that situation.
Well, the classiest part was you realized that Nastasi would have had a cakewalk and the fans would not get to see a match the next day. So you could, you could have taken the payday. Yeah.
I would have had to. I couldn't have shown up to play, even to fake it.
Right. Now, and then I think, what was it? A couple years after that, John Newcomb did the same thing because he gave it the fans the finals. He got injured too, and he referenced you when you were losing a match. And I think a lot of the recreational players will want to hear this. What does a pro tennis player think? You don't have a coach that said, hey, remember the game plan. You don't have note cards. You're going through a match and you're losing. What's going through your mind on the changeover? How do you try to get yourself back on track? Because we've all had those days where you can't even hit a ball from warm-ups on.
Yeah, that's a good question. That day that you just can't do anything, you just chalk it up. But when you're in the heat of the battle, I probably had 2 or 3 key phrases that I used every time I was returning serve, and that I would just repeat to myself. I knew that I needed to be a great return of service to set up the next point because my ground strokes weren't great. But if I could create a moment where I could speed to the ball and cut off a shot. So for me, Rob, it came back to, Tom, you got to move your feet, and you've got to just exaggerate, the quickness to the ball. And then the last part would be make the shot. And then you try to bring it down to 1 shot at a time, not 1 point at a time, but 1 shot at a time. This ball. And then if the ball came to you, and we didn't scream out like the women do sometimes, but that's what they're doing. They're expressing their focus on 1 point. And that's what I'd have to do. And sometimes it would help to get back in, and sometimes it get close, or sometimes it didn't work. But that was the theme that I had. This ball, this ball, this ball.
I love that. That's the each point has its own history, so you don't get too wrapped up. But then again, within that point, it's this ball, expect the next ball, play that next ball. That's great.
Well, and then you had to take into consideration, and you couldn't play. At least I couldn't play my opponent that much. I had to play with my shot and then react, because again, I wasn't a consistently strong baseline player. I could still hit ground strokes, but I wasn't dominating that game. I had to dominate with placement, with movement, and cutting the ball off at an angle rather than staying parallel with that baseline.
So you like taking the time away from your opponent by taking it earlier, as you mentioned, hugging the baseline.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was moving more diagonally to the net post.
Yeah.
with my shots.
I heard years ago, I think it was Vic Braden, he talked about what a nerve buster is, that the professionals, how they move their feet back and forth returning serve is actually a great way to help your nerves. And that usually the reaction is to get slower, everything stops and you stop breathing. So breathe. And I love what you just said, move your feet. That's rule number one.
Yeah. I tried to, like I said, pass it on to my daughters. That was the only thing. Move your feet.
Yeah, that's right. Starts there. Yeah, exactly. All right. You were not only did you spend some time on the Pro Tour, you were also recognized for the NCAA Hall of Fame, the Washington State Sports Hall of Fame, and the USTA Hall of Fame. And I want to get into the USA aspect of that. That you were a member of the U.S. Davis Cup team as a player, and you remember. Well, tell us about that experience. We can watch it now, but it was kind of like the Wild Wild West in some of those countries, wasn't it?
Yeah. Plus, nerve wracking in that, uh, every tournament you'd play, the crowd would be about, or they'd be pleasant for all the players, even at the slams. Occasionally you'd play somebody at the French and they'd get a little more vocal. The Italian wasn't a slam, but that was always hard to play in Italian in Rome because they were so supportive. But in Davis Cup, it was beyond because they would bring drums or horns and they'd have their songs. It'd be like a soccer match.
Mm-hmm.
And you just were waiting for the umpire to take control. And it was, silence, please, let the players play. And the crowd wouldn't pay attention. They didn't have point penalties against the crowd at that time. They do now. So you just have to be able to relax and deal with it. The worst match that's ever been so-called recorded was when we were playing in Romania against Nastasi and Teriak, and Teriak was the chief instigator in this, as we find out later, that he actually would meet with the linesmen and they would kind of orchestrate how they would handle situations. And with me, they decided that he would use stall tactics and replay tactics, questioning a line call. It's on clay. So then the linesmen would come out and they would change the call or ask for, let's play the point over, et cetera, et cetera. The Davis Cup at that time had one neutral referee. He sat about 4 rows deep. The guy in the chair would be Romanian. All the linesmen are Romanian. So Enrique spoke French, English, and Spanish. Didn't speak Romanian. The only person in the stands that spoke all those languages just happened to be Jan Teriak, the player for Romania. So he would come up and be the interpreter for situations that were going on that would be questioning a line call and speaking Spanish with Enrique, speaking English with Dennis Ralston, our captain, and then Romanian with the guy in the chair. So it's been written about that it may be the worst officiated match, not by the main referee, but by the linesman. So with my match, they finally wore me down. The delays, we had one that was about 16 or 17 minutes long before a decision was made. One time a lines call was made. It turned out it was the foot fault judge that changed the call, not the linesman, in favor of the Romanian. So, dealing with all this.
Yeah.
And then when he played Stan, although Stan beat him in 5 sets, their tactic there was just blatantly make bad calls. And so I'm in the locker room waiting to play the 5th match if we have to play it. Fortunately, we didn't because Stan won the match. But Brian Godfrey, one of the practice players, came in the locker room to tell me and Eric Van Dillen, who was babysitting me to get ready for the match, basically, said, they're just robbing us blind.
Yeah.
And so over time with Hawkeye, the referee now up in the chair is a neutral, so they have better control of the situation. But it was hectic. There were some phenomenally long discussions or delays.
Good grief.
And then you've got your 6 guys and your coach. That's your team.
That's it.
You might have a few Americans that made the trip, but they certainly weren't gonna get in the shouting match
Hmm.
with that. So man up or or
Wow, that's like the 72 USA Olympic basketball team almost. But going back to what you said there, I know people that are of good tennis minds about the rules. We don't replay points. If you don't know that the ball's 100% out, it's considered in. So how did they justify that? I mean, what do you mean? We
there were
don't agree.
well,
It didn't go our way. Let's replay it.
yeah, that was about it.
Flat out cheating
Yeah, yeah,
on
yeah,
a
and
clay court,
so
no doubt. That's even more hysterical.
yeah, well, all of a sudden that spot disappeared.
Yeah.
You walk over it, and it wasn't a surprise. The Australians had played them the semifinal match in Romania, and there they were calling foot faults, the second serve foot fault on a big point,
Hmm.
and they were blatantly not foot faults. Eric Van Dillen solved the problem early on when he was playing with Stan against Nastasi and Tiriac. I'll never forget that. The first game he served, he started off literally 6 inches behind the baseline serving to kind of make his point.
Hmm.
The crowd kind of reacted and
Yeah.
everything. And so, you dealt with it, that was it at the time. So when point penalties came in, and there was a way that, basically a technical foul.
Hmm.
You get one or two, and then you're out.
Hmm.
We didn't have that then. If somebody was acting up, the umpire in the chair say, "Mr. Gorman, please behave. Thank you, Mr. Gorman," and
Right.
then you'd behave.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd get on with it.
Wow. Well, I
Yeah.
guess you have to sit there and think that I can't hit any ball near the line today.
No, the court becomes very small.
Right. Even
Yeah.
a serve down the tee.
Yeah. Yeah.
Holy cow. But the good news is Team USA, you guys won the cup in 1972, champs, correct?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Stan was a giant at that time. I mean, he did have to literally carry that, because I would say the odds were, if I get into the fifth match with Nastasi, he was still on his roll beating me and on clay in that
Yeah.
situation. So it was really interesting. Eric and I are in the locker room watching on a TV in the locker room, and we just started the fifth set, and we thought, oh boy, I'm sweating bullets. And all of a sudden, Stan stood up at the baseline, and Eric and I have talked about this. Get it? Stan's back is to the TV, and he always stood up very tall on his serving motion, and he hit a first serve, an ace right down the middle, and it was good. They didn't call it out, and it was an ace. And Eric made the prediction right there. He says, Stan's going to win this, and it might be 6-love. And sure enough, he did.
Wow.
It was like the dam broke for them, and Stan was able to,
Yeah.
do that,
Yeah.
and basically do what John would do in a lot of Davis Cup matches in the other country, and that was, he was so strong, and it was like he looked at everybody in the stands, says, "I'm going to beat you. I'm going to beat you. I'm going to beat you."
Awesome.
Keep it within yourself, because John was phenomenal in Davis Cup matches the years that he played when I was captain. He never once jeopardized the integrity of the team. He stayed within himself, but he was just, he was out there to beat everybody, including the
Hmm.
10,000 fans.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you had to be super strong
Right.
to handle that situation.
Well, you were talking about John McEnroe for those who don't know who John is, but so 1986, you became captain. Did Arthur say he wanted to turn it over to you, or how were you approached about becoming the captain?
No, I think Arthur, what happened was that they had been in Sweden playing the year before, and it may have been the final or semis. Jimmy and John were on the team. Jimmy had been, I think Donald Dell was his agent. I think ProServe was representing him, and they did a great thing. They convinced Jimmy that he should play Davis Cup. It would be great for the team, and it would be good for him, because he chose prior to that never to play. Whole nother hour story if you want that some other time, Rob. But he plays, and John was a little upset because when it was announced that Jimmy was going to play, it made it sound like Jimmy was going to save Davis Cup. But John had already won with the team for 2 of the 4 years he was playing. So he took that. I didn't like that. So Jimmy and John never got along. I mean, and they would take it out on the court. You'd see it. And the behavior, although I wasn't there to see it or hear exactly what they were talking about, but evidently it wasn't great. It upset the USTA tremendously, and they came out with a code of conduct that all players had to sign for then years after, that they would behave during Davis Cup. So neither one of those two guys signed it. You know, they aren't going to say, "You're going to tell me how I have to behave."
Yeah, shocker.
Yeah. And so when that all happened, Arthur he'd been captain for 5 years. He'd won it a couple years. And I think he said, "Okay, I've had my run. Let somebody else do it." And so we went through an interview process, and Marty Reeson was a major candidate, as was Stan Smith. I, at that time then, was coaching the women's Whiteman Cup team and Fed Cup team. So I was feeling that was going to be, you know, what I would do. And so I thought either one, Stan or Marty, would get it. And, you know, I was real surprised and happy and proud they chose me to do that. And the first thing that I did was called up John. I said, "John, are you going to," because he had one more year to go with the president of the USTA that made this ruling. I said, "John, are you going to sign that thing?" And he said, "No." He said, "But I want you to choose me and defy that guy." I said, "John, I am not even captain yet. I want to." So he did not play that first year. And then when the president of USTA had his 2 years up, then they did away with that rule. And so John ended up playing about 5 or 6 matches, as well as that final year in 92 when I didn't have to do much coaching at all. I had Pete and Jim and Andre and John and Ricky Leach as the team. I mean, that was our form of the dream team.
Right.
Where they could do it. And John was even more than an assistant coach. I mean, he was the heart and soul, that when we had a couple tough, tight moments, he was just great. He was inspiring. He could do a new Rockney type speech in the locker room and all that stuff, for those that have to Google that.
Yeah.
But he was terrific.
I remember you said he was always such the ultimate team player, and I know he has a team sports background, and where most people think that he would be this selfish brat that was consumed with being number one in the world. But he said, I remember you saying, he was the best team player that you ever coached.
He was terrific. Yeah, he had played a lot of soccer when he was younger, so you had that team aspect. But I mean, he was patriotic too. I mean, he was the first guy, you know, to grab the flag and to march it around the court. You know, and then the other guys who were more individualistic. Though the strange thing about the dynamics, Rob, was that I've got to make a call as to who of those 3 guys, Courier, who actually was number 1 at that time in the world after winning the French and Australia, and Sampras and Agassi, who's going to play singles, and then create a doubles team, because Flaxaguso had been the doubles team, but with the addition of these 3 singles players, then we picked John to play doubles, which was, you know, John McEnroe and anybody else is the best doubles team in the world.
Right.
So then you know, basically I'm telling Pete, "I don't think you're good enough to play, Pete, but I want you on the team." I mean, I didn't say that, but you know, that's how sometimes maybe he felt it. So you'd have to work with the guys, and they'd have to trust you and be okay if you're honest with them and upfront with them. That's what you couldn't give them any false hope. Like, say, "Pete, you know, if you really do well here, I choose you. We plan these things far enough ahead." And so he was great. And then Pete ended up playing doubles with John, and they were just awesome, because, like I said, John McEnroe would have been, besides Roy Emerson back in the day, the best doubles player, individual doubles player that most anybody would have played with him, and he'd win a tournament.
Right. Nice having that Sampras serve and let Johnny Mac take over with the volley too.
Yeah, yeah, that's about it. So, Pete, all you have to do is serve and make a couple
Right.
returns each set, and you're fine.
Yeah. And the comeback, I think was it Dallas 92 that you won, that when Pete won the doubles with McEnroe, that Pete Sampras said, "I love you."
Yeah, yeah. We were actually in Fort Worth, yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, I've got talk about a good photo. I've got a photo of them hugging each other and loving each other in the hug, so to speak. And Pete revealed that later during the press conference.
Yeah.
That's what he said. Was, I mean, come on. When has anybody ever seen a picture or heard
Yeah.
those two guys talk like that?
Right.
So that was a warm. It was a warm time, and and John, unfortunately, was going through a rough time with Tatum, with his wife, and so he was dealing with that emotional part of
Sure.
what he was doing too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was rough.
Well, what I don't think you get enough credit for is that's leadership. And Coach Case talked about the dream team in basketball. It takes a real art to take those egos and say, "Hey, we're playing under this banner, and I'm now cheering for the guy that 50 other 1 weeks of the year that I'm trying to kick his butt. He's trying to kick my butt." No, but we're playing for the USA. There was a rift, or a so-called rift, between McEnroe and Agassi. Maybe that was Portland, I'm not sure, but you had to mend those fences before you could even get onto the practice court. Can you tell us about that?
Early on, John and Andre, I mean, the age difference, as well as John's greatness, was starting to diminish. Andre was coming on, and Andre was Andre, and so they never had a lot of great things to say to each other in the press. So we're playing, and so these years kind of blend in. So it would have been 80, 89, or maybe 90. Gosh, maybe 91. Anyway, we're playing against France in San Diego, and trying to coordinate to get them all there by Sunday night so we could practice starting Monday morning. So it was always kind of an effort. Well, when's John going to get there? When's Andre going to get there? And so they get there and they're good, and but the rift was still there a little bit. So when they both got in close to midnight Sunday night, I said, well, before we get going, before the press conference on Tuesday, we got to meet. So we met up in my room for 11 o'clock press conference, met about 10 o'clock, and really just had a mind-blowing hour of two guys starting to understand each other, two great tennis pros that were so different and kind of coming together without them realizing it. And Andre allowing John to speak his truth, and Andre acknowledging it and maturing right in front of me, so to speak. At 11 o'clock, still in the room, and I get a call from our public relations guy, say, "Tom, where are you guys? Got all the press downstairs here." I said, "Dad, give us about 10 or 15 more minutes.
We're busy.
We'll be right down." And so we wrapped it up and we went downstairs and talk about old photos I have. I have an old photo of the press conference. The guys both of them are sitting at the table with me, and I'm over there sitting like this, if you can see, with my hands, like a real defensive position. I don't know really what they're going to say.
Right.
Because all you needed was a press guy to ask one of those stupid questions to spark something. And sure enough, though, these guys had reached whatever, or had gone by what they had with each other or against each other, and were starting on this path of friendship. And it was just, I was going,
Ooh, yeah.
glad we got through that.
Right.
Well, the great part of the story, Rob, I don't mind sharing it, and that was fast forward to then the next year. I think that must have been 91. 92, the year we're in Fort Worth, and prior to them showing up on Sunday, I got a call from John, and this is when he's going through his real tough time with his marriage, and he wasn't sure if he's going to be able to in Fort Worth, just mentally and emotionally. I said, John, listen, you do what you've got to do. I mean, that's the most important thing. And it turns out that he had been spending time with Andre, who was helping him through this time
Wow.
period. Yeah. And then I went back to that time
Hmm.
prior to the San Diego, when that would have been the farthest thing away. So, and they've have continued to form, a friendship and
Right.
kind of an understanding and admiration.
Right.
John, I think they both start understand, okay, that's what makes Andre tick. It's
Hmm.
pretty good.
Yeah.
And this is what makes John
Yeah.
tick. That's pretty good. So
Yeah.
pretty special moments.
That's great. All because we're USA. I like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, a lot of people think, well, oh man, this is easy to coach. I got Sampras, I got McEnroe, I got Agassi. Where in reality, like I remember watching you in that legendary 5-setter against Becker up in Connecticut. I watched you in the sidelines. McEnroe would come and sit down, and sometimes I would see you say two things, like 3 words to him or whatever. It's like those guys are out there doing it on their own year after year after year. Now it's like, what do I say? What was it? How tough was that to coach?
Well, I'll tell you what, Rob, early on, I would ask them, how much do you want me to talk on the sidelines?
Great.
Because I knew from my brief times that I played, when you change sides, you only have a minute. And depending on what's going on in the match, you got to be comfortable sitting in that chair, and you got to be comfortable sitting next to that guy. So I didn't want to be, I wanted to make sure that they knew that I had their support the whole way, and but and then the second part of this, I knew they were each starting to have their own coaches, and I knew their coaches, so I would call them and say, okay, Nick, for Nick Bollettieri, what's Andre? What does he listen to? What does he
Hmm.
want to hear? And so he'd be different than Jose Aguirre, who was coaching Courier. And so it was like talking their language. Some wanted to hear a lot, some didn't. S- Uh, for a while there, it was like, and Pete didn't like to talk much at all. He just figured it's going to come around. Um, so that was my learning process. I do remember with John, he's playing Becker, that match you're talking about. And I think for the first four changeovers, all I'm doing, literally, though, I may have said a word or two, but I don't remember. I maybe said, "Do you want some water or do you want a towel?" That'd be it, because they were winning their serve. So he got it 4-5, Becker serving the first time. Now, the one time that I played John, my final year at the US Open, what I felt against him was nothing that I'd felt against all the other players I'd ever played, going back to Laver. And that was, John played a different game. He took the point away from you. Talk about cutting angles and quickness. And it was like I could never find his ball. Be like a baseball pitcher that had something, the ball just moved everywhere. That's how John played. You couldn't get a hit on it. And he used to make that return, and with that flick of that wrist, be already 2 steps in. And Becker was a Wimbledon champion and great server. So I said, well, John, if he hits any second serves, why don't you, chip and charge, or, do something different. I can't remember exactly what I said, but it was more of an attack thing. Don't let the ball come to you. And sure enough, he goes out and he broke serve. So, so of course, Rob, I'm just thinking, great coaching. Yeah, listen. So we get into the second set. Serve, 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 serve. Everybody holds. I'm getting the towel. I'm getting the water for him. I'm not saying a word. He gets to 4-5 again. And I said, John, just like the first set, let's take it to him.
Yeah.
Go after that serve. Well, he didn't win the serve, goes into a tiebreaker. And so, as this match, that set developed, because there's no tiebreakers, rather, we're up to 12, we're up to 13. And maybe I gave reference to that one other time. And finally, 13-14, I'm just about to say anything. And John for the first time, looks at me and he says, "Tom, I think you've used that line enough." So, I'll try to figure this I can figure this out.
Yeah,
So, that was something. So that would be the extreme because you don't tell them, how to hit a forehand or
sure.
how to volley or that. It's more because we would meet a Thursday night and imagine that year, Rob, guys in the room, we're talking about how to play Stefan Edberg, right? So you've got all these guys that have played him, and the guy is currently the US Open champion, but they all feel the guy can't play. That's the mentality of a player.
Yeah.
I can do this, I'll do that. That guy can't play. Yeah, but he won the US Open. Well, okay. But, but the mentality was this
Yeah.
is how you beat him. So that was what I took onto the court was, hey, remember when we were talking about this? This is his weakness. This is how we're playing him.
Right.
And so real simple,
Yeah.
right to the point.
Yeah. So you basically let them tell you and then you just reiterate it.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
they're the players.
Right. Yeah.
And I think now perhaps the Davis Cup captain for a while would travel a lot more during the year. I had a job, at a club, and I'm just going to the matches except for the Grand Slams.
Right.
So I wasn't as familiar with the individual players they were all playing. Like when we played Muster over in Austria,
Right.
Muster never lost a clay court match in Austria. I mean, there's no way that I'm coaching our guys to play him. I'm coaching our guys to play, that's how they have to play.
Sure. Yeah. Can you, I think, I'm not sure if it was Kansas City. I saw the picture. It was hysterical. Everybody had the do-rags on. Can you tell
Oh,
us the water balloon
geez.
story?
Yeah. Yeah, they got
Nobody
me.
got hurt.
Nobody got hurt. I never had a curfew problem with these guys. I don't think ever once had to think about suspending them. They were all dedicated and, they always were ready to get out there to play. But this one time, so they had this big rubber band. I forget what they call it, the winger or something, where they put a water balloon inside it and they would pull it back and then they'd shoot it out. And they would do this at tennis tournaments sometimes. And so these guys thought it was really funny. We were at the 13th floor of the Ritz-Carlton there in Kansas City, and they're out on the balcony, and it's a night that the USTA officials are going to a dinner or something, and the players already made their appearance and they're back. And I'm walking down the hallway and I'm hearing these guys laughing and screaming. And the doors open, I'm looking, and these guys are winging these water balloons out, and I don't know where they're shooting them, but I kind of feel they see some USTA officials walking back. This is my impression,
Yeah.
and they're trying to hit them, and I just lost it. It's, I would say, the only time in 8 years where the guys really got to me, and so I'm yelling and screaming at them and lawsuits, and I'm thinking all this stuff. And so they got this picture that they sent to me later, have these T-shirts that say "Nasty Boys,"
Okay.
and with the water balloon in the picture. And so
That's awesome.
now I can laugh about it, but
Yeah.
that's when Tom.
Yeah. Can you imagine the force of those things? It's like, I think when you first described it, it's like two people are holding it, one person's in the middle and launching it across city
these things
streets.
they were stretched out about 6 feet
Right.
with the rubber. I mean, these aren't rubber bands. These are, or they are, but they were.
Yeah. Good times. Good innocent fun, right? At
They
least they're
got
not
me.
drinking and partying. I mean, they're just kids.
No, I never had an issue.
All right. This comes up all the time with talking with sports buddies. Well, who do you think the greatest tennis player is? All right. You have played Laver, Borg. You've beaten him. You've been on the court with Stan Smith. And you also coached McEnroe, Sampras, Agassi, front row seat of all those great players. You saw Becker, you saw Edberg, Vilander, all those great players. you also witnessed Federer, Djokovic, Nadal. I don't know who else is more qualified. The floor is
Yeah,
yours.
no,
Go ahead.
you've named the guys who would all qualify,
Right?
in their, yeah, I'd say in their era. My reaction was always that if Laver played now, he would be the best, and if Borg played now, he would be the best,
Okay.
or in with the best, because they have those qualities. McEnroe, I put in that category as well. McEnroe, Borg, Laver, and then there's a couple other guys in between, but not, and then the Agassi, Sampras, and then these three guys now
Yeah.
that
That's
are
it. Yeah.
retired. We're guys like Murray and Becker, great players, but not the
Not right there.
GOAT.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and
Well, and it's
so,
it's such a hard.
well, it's, I mean, I think basketball players go through that too. I mean, I watched Elgin Baylor at Seattle U back in the late '50s, and I would say there are some guys that think he was every bit the GOAT
Mm-hmm.
that LeBron is, but a different era.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, I
Yeah.
And so you put him now, he's probably, could be the GOAT. So
Yeah.
I think there's a few that could, in my rating system, would be a potential GOAT, or a GOAT of his generation or his
Yeah.
era.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's,
And that's not,
talking about the technology thing, it's like, well, who used a wood racket? Who used the racket of today? The training,
yeah,
and the surface has changed. They made the base harder at Wimbledon. That's just coincidentally the first year Nadal wins Wimbledon. I'd love to
sure.
see Nadal and Borg on clay with the same racket. That would be fun.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
are all great things. I
Yeah.
wish we could see again.
Right. Yeah. So one of those you'll never get to the, absolutely number one. If you were commissioner of tennis, would there any rules that you would change of today's game?
Yeah, we've toyed with no ad scoring, but I kind of like, I mean, I enjoy that there's tiebreakers, but I always thought stamina was, part of what you were trying to be as a great player. Although with the way that the games go now, I mean, we had some matches were 5 hours long. We had a couple 32-30 sets. My friend from Seattle, I think one set was 47-45
Holy
on the
smokes.
grass in Southampton. Dick Knight against Springelmeyer. So, I mean, that's a rarity. If the scoring, I know this, I don't know why, Rob, why do we call it 15-30-40 game? I would love to have seen it originally 1-2-3-4. That'd be simple. It
Yeah.
would, make it simple, although the tradition evidently was a hour clock. It was That's how it first started, except when it got to 40, the French messed it up instead of 45,
Yeah.
so the
Yeah.
French were always messing up the tennis
Yeah.
game. Uh, I don't know. I don't really think I like how it is, pretty much.
Would you get rid of coaching or put the coaches up in a box somewhere?
I used to be old school and just say you're the guy, but I think it's evolved, so it's probably needed, or so complicated that you need help. And I don't mind having the coach being fairly active. I don't know. I think the women were allowing a coach on the court at the end of a set. I don't have a problem with that. I don't like the you know the how much coaching there could be,
Yeah.
but some. I'm
Right.
okay with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. How about lets? I've heard that, we're going to get rid of lets on the serve.
We did that in World Team Tennis. It was all right.
Okay. Yeah. You're talking about the deuce ad, no ad and deuce. I read in a trade magazine years ago, somebody had kind of a fun thought that when you get to 40, you got to win by two. Instead of calling it deuce, add in, add out, going back to deuce, and people come off the court and say, I had a forever deuce game. Well, what does that mean? That the guy's theory was, well, what if we went to, okay, if you get to 40, you got to beat them 60-40. And then, so you come off the court, yeah, I had a deuce game, 120-100. So you know how many deuces. I thought
Oh,
that'd be,
okay.
kind of fun. All right, I'm going to wrap up here with a little tiebreaker action. Real quick questions for you. Who's the best forehand you ever saw or faced?
Best forehand would have been Borg.
Okay. Second question, best backhand.
Borg,
Okay. Best volley, and you can't include yourself.
McEnroe.
Okay. Yeah. Unbelievable hands, huh? Best serve.
Uh, my generation was B. Smith.
Okay. And then next generation.
Uh, one guy that had it all is Federer. Best backhand, best forehand, best serve. If you combine the three, Nadal is, I don't know what he's doing with that swing, how you teach that. He's a phenom with however he developed those things, his strokes, meaning. Djokovic, I love Novak in that I saw his transition between being a good player and a great player when I was out at La Quinta. All the players would stay at the tournament for Indian Wells. And from that one year that he was good, and then they won Davis Cup, and then he went down and won the Australian Open. And prior to that, all the players feared him, except they wait for the time when he'd get mad. He'd kind of explode and lose the match because of his temper. And then he got through it, and then the rest is history. And I asked his coach, who I played some tennis against, what did you guys do? And he basically said, found his contact spot, which was really an interesting comment because they said his swing was fine, but sometimes he wasn't hitting the ball in the exact spot. And so whatever they did, if they took video, whatever, so that Novak was confident that if he hits the ball right in that spot, it's good. So that then when he was playing the match, and if he missed, he wouldn't do this Nikki Pilic thing, look up at
Right.
to the God, say, why did I miss it? He missed it because he missed a spot. So he knew. So that helped his positiveness because he started becoming the most positive driven pro out there. I mean, he does have a moment or two, but the difference was just night and day.
Perseverance.
I really he's lasting a little longer than everybody's thinking.
Yeah.
He might be toward the end, but you can't count him out.
I remember calling you during the Australian Open one Saturday night, asking you from your professional standpoint, because you've been courtside, that Pete Sampras did not give any tells. He didn't tell the opponent, guess what? Here comes this type of serve. I was amazed. Maybe it was the 95 Open, Australian Open. I said, are Agassi's eyes just out of this world? And you said, yeah, he's probably the greatest returner ever. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I
Okay.
would say, yeah, for sure. You have a generation where you have Ken Rosewall back in the 60s, Connors
Yeah.
also had that reputation, but Andre, and then you've heard the latest story about Andre and Becker, right?
Oh, with the
So
tells where his tongue was?
yeah,
Go ahead.
because his tongue would give away where he's serving it. I mean,
Yeah.
imagine that. I
Yeah.
mean, what a great story. Yeah,
And
that's
then
a
I
good
heard he
one.
told Boris that story,
Yeah.
several years ago.
Yeah.
Boris blew up. Yeah.
Oh, by the
Uh,
way,
yeah. Yeah. Thank you. It's funny, we talk about the greatest of all time. Jimmy Connors is sitting around going, I won more tournaments than all you jokers. And even though Novak's
Jimmy
getting
was,
close to him.
yeah, I'll tell you what, he is the guy that would put out the most effort all the time of
Yeah.
anybody.
Yeah.
So that was probably his strength. He was relentless. You know, it was a matter of hanging in there with that intensity, if you could, that could
Yeah.
equal him, because his strokes were solid, but there was nothing phenomenally spectacular about any one stroke. It was all really good. So he loved playing.
Yeah.
He didn't take that much time off.
Mm-hmm. I heard somebody say he was the Pete Rose of tennis, and when Jimmy
Yeah, a
heard that, he
good
loved it.
example. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right, just a couple more quick questions. Your favorite athlete of all time? It does not have to be tennis player.
Oh, gosh. Favorite athlete of all time? Rob, I'm stumped.
Okay.
Mickey Mantle.
All right, there you go, Yankee. Which leads to my second question. Who's your favorite sports team of all time?
Any of the Seattle teams.
Okay.
Currently the Seahawks, and right behind them, the Mariners.
Okay.
I'm a Seattleite through and through.
Okay.
Lived and died with all their wins and losses.
Okay. Now, what's your all-time favorite book?
Uh, I don't know. I started getting in. Well, that's a good question. I'm gonna take a pass on that.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right, several. So, all right, man, this has been fun, Tom. I appreciate your time. This has been great.
Rob, I've enjoyed it.
So, and I can't wait to go back and edit it because it's like, oh, there's another nugget. So he was former top 10 player in the world, winningest Davis Cup in U.S. Davis Cup history. You got a ring for Davis Cup, and did they give you guys rings or anything for that to say that you got a ring?
Yeah. It's a real nice ring. It's not the size of a Super Bowl, but
Okay.
it's impressive. Yeah,
You ever
thanks.
you ever wear them out?
I do occasionally.
Good.
Don't happen to have it on me
Yeah.
today,
Okay.
but
All right. Well, that's like winning a Super Bowl, in my opinion. So that's great. Even more special that represents USA. So, well, again, everybody out there, I appreciate Tom Gorman and his insights in tennis. And, you got many years of experience in the tennis world. So, again, I also appreciate your friendship, Tom. So, thank you very much for being here today.
likewise.
So, for everybody out there, if you like this episode, if you know another tennis buddy, just pass it on to them or any of my previous episodes. So, again, until next time, make the most of your time and always hang tough.